where leaders who know where we are going must be given an opportunity to guide and lead a country towards where they are going. I appreciate Kagame. You might not like him. I don't mind. But when last did you hear of elections in Britain? And think about it. Russia is doing well. North Korea is doing well. Here we are struggling with democracy. And democracy has become demon crazy, a passport of poverty and constant changing of leaders. You can do nothing in 3 years, even as a husband. How much can you do in 3 years in terms of a leader of a country? Give the guy a break.
A leader who knows where we are going as a country must be given an opportunity, not only in the country, but in the continent of Africa. The leaders who we know that they know where we want to be as African, let's give them a chance to lead us as what Sahelian region leaders doing. Now we want to see the whole continent of Africa. The leaders understand where we are going. Where we are going is to unite the continent of Africa and have one currency, one leadership, I mean one president, one bank, one judiciary, one army, and so many things that as African we need to share. Brothers and sisters, queens and kings, sons and daughters in the continent and those who are in diaspora. This is Facts About Africa, the African channel where we share thoughts and changing the narrative of Mother Africa. I want you to listen the whole speech from Joshua MAPONGA and then write down in the comment section what you got from this video.
Rule of law is not a problem for Zambia. It's a problem for the entire continent of Africa. Because the greatest percentage of our legal framework is an inherited legal structure from the colonial days. So an African is not allowed to carry gold. You will be arrested. Who wrote that law? When was that law written? By who? You will find a bunch of white people in 1935, in 1940 something, who put that act. And that act becomes part of the government. Environmental issues, mining issues, production issues, manufacturing issues, IP issues. All these things are managed by the legal framework as entrenched in the constitutions. We wish that our African leaders, particularly our African politicians, when they go to parliament, they must go to parliament to change these laws, to change these policies, and favor indigenous people. So I really hoped that in his new dawn, you cannot have a new dawn with old policies. You cannot have a new dawn when the border control issues are still the same. The taxation issues are still the same. The Africans are still viewed the same in terms of the constitution. The banks are still in the hands of the colonialists. The insurances are still in the hands of the colonialists. Then what kind of a new dawn can you give the people if the fundamentals and the keys that assist you to transform the community are not transformed? Again, I'm not blaming the president. I'm blaming the community at large, the Africans at large. I don't think we are fully aware that when we swear in our presidents as presidents of our countries, we are actually putting a yoke on their shoulders that they must run and live by the rule of law. And the very law restricts, forbids the function of the Africans. The laws that we have, which form our constitutions, have lots of ambiguities in terms of conflicting provisions which are entrenched in these constitutions. There's a concentration of power in some certain countries put in the wrong place in the president's office, when power must be in permanent secretaries and those that are delivering projects, so that even when the president moves away, permanent secretaries must remain in power because they are the custodians of the software of those departments. We have weak separations in terms of power as Africans, in terms of separation of power between executive power, legislative power, and judiciary power. There is usually an overlap. Every president will want to come up with his own new forms of leaders. Lack of transparency and in terms of accountability in some certain cases, ethnic and regional tensions, that could also be a hindering factor. So when we look into these 5 factors ambiguities, concentration of power, weaker separations, transparency and accountability issues, ethical and regional. We need to walk into the Constitution and see how these factors present our presidents with bottlenecks that restrict them from making autonomous decisions, because they must still report to the government and report over there. In some certain cases, I actually believe in benevolent dictatorship, where leaders who know where we are going must be given an opportunity to guide and lead a country towards where they are going. I appreciate Kagame. You might not like him. I don't mind. But when last did you hear of elections in Britain? And think about it. Russia is doing well. North Korea is doing well. Here we are struggling with democracy, and democracy has become demon crazy, a passport of poverty and constant changing of leaders. You can do nothing in 3 years, even as a husband. How much can you do in 3 years in terms of a leader of a country? Give the guy a break. Mining companies in Zambia will include Barrick Gold, which owns a copper mine, which is the contract that they have there will last them until 2049. You have, as you have rightfully mentioned, the Vandata resource and the ZCCM, which is an investment holding company, and the Changa copper mine, which is due to operate until 2025, and ZCCM, which is an investment wing of the government itself, which is running the Mopani mine, which is due to operate until 2046. International Resources Holding, IRH, which is owning 51% of the Mopani mine itself, and the Konkola copper mine also. It is important to note that all these major companies that we are talking about, in as much as we call them multinational companies, the involvement and ownership, I'm not talking about minimal 2%, 3%, 5%, 20% ownership. We will not be able to liberate ourselves as Africans as long as we are footnotes to the colonial economic structures. We need these top 5 companies, one of them to be fully owned by Zambians, fully owned 100% by Zambians. So where do we lose it? Because in the same whim, these are the companies that are consuming the fuels, consuming electricity, and the people are complaining about load shedding and power issues, when these same companies are taking the profits from these mines and taking them back to their own countries. How can you say you are running a country and yet you are a minimal shareholder on the resources of your own country? In Zimbabwe, we have now established what we call the Munumtapa Holdings or Munumtapa Trust, where we are now going to be gathering all the resources of the country into a common basket so that the entire nation can benefit. There is no way we can give away the resources of a country to a multinational organization to be eating these resources for 199 years plus. And constantly they are declaring losses on their books, yet they are still listed on stock exchanges, making millions with our own resources. We needed to start saying, when they come in, the terms and conditions of their operation must be that they must, 1, give a major shareholding to locals. 2, they must be given a mandate. They must process those resources and beneficiate them and stop selling raw materials. Because every time a truck passes your house carrying raw materials, it is carrying away jobs and employment. So yes, until mining is fully owned and in the hands of local people, you will not be talking about empowerment. And this, for me, is a critical issue of nationalization of national assets. These assets don't belong to multinational companies. They belong to the Zambians. And as such, the Zambian community must have direct access to benefiting from those resources. So yes, mining is important, but in the hands of colonialists, in the hands of multinational companies, what you call here multinational investments or international investments. Where have you seen a country investing in your country and it does not benefit them? So at the end of the day, you are still facing what I might want to call economic abuse at the hands of these colonial systems, because they are there first to protect their interests and the interests of their principals, and those principles are not within the borders of the country. They are within the international community. So the question is, How much do you benefit by receiving handouts of small little CSIs? We build a clinic. We give out medicines for TB. We what? But this TB was caused by the dust which was coming from your mind. So which part of that does the Zambian community need to understand? That we need direct ownership of major and key resources of the country to be within the Zambian hands. And let me mention it clearly, very clearly and loudly. Zambians, Zimbabweans, Africans must not be afraid of making fellow Zambians billionaires by giving them access to resources. Give a local Zambian money. The government must support local people to become billionaires and own the economy. The British do the same. The Chinese do the same. The Arabs do the same. The Americans do the same. Why is that every time an African becomes a billionaire, he must be a criminal? But when a British is a millionaire, he's a businessman. When a German is a billionaire, he's a businessman. Look at what Dangote has done in Nigeria. A game changer. Look at what Kudakwashe Tagwire has done in Zimbabwe. A game changer. Look at what Mutsepes can do. Game changers. So we must not be afraid as Zambians. Every time you see a Zambian with money, you think that it is corrupt. There's nothing illegal about doing business with the government. They must do business with government. If they don't do business with government, who will do business with them? If the government does not support them, who will support them? Do you think someone will come from Europe and come and help you to become a billionaire in your own country? So we need to empower local people. South Africa came up with the concept of
King Joshua Maponga. Are you insinuating?
Well, you heard well the speech from Joshua Maponga, and I know that you have got something on this speech that Africa, we need to own our resources. We need to stop this exploitation of our minerals. Africa, we need to have one currency. End of the day, Africa, we need to be united. He spoke many things that Africa at this generation, at this current generation, we need to achieve before the end of our generation. Let us start as our founding fathers did. So I hope you get something. As I said, please let me know what you think on his speech in the comment section, because the aim of sharing these kinds of videos is to remind each other that our role as Africans at current generation is this and that, and let us start to our children's children to be to live in better Africa, because the Africa that we see today is not the Africa that we want. So brothers and sisters, you heard, and let me share this and see what you thought in the comment section.